All right, now we want to add a delete button on each row. So first, let's add a new column here. In the T-head section, we need a new TH. This is going to be an empty TH because we don't want to have a label in the heading of this column. Next, we're going to add another TD here. In this TD, we want to render a button with a few bootstrap classes. So the first one is BTN. The second one is BTN-danger to give it the red color. And the last one is BTN-SM to make it look small. Press the tab. Here's our button. Let's call this delete. Before going any further, let's look at the result. So back in the browser. All right, our delete button is rendered properly. Beautiful. Now we need to handle the click event. So here we want to handle the onClick event. We set this to an expression, and here we should call a method like this. This.handle delete. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this method. Just above the render method, we add handle delete. Now earlier you learned that here we should use the arrow function syntax or bind this event handler in the constructor so we can get access to the current object. So I'm going to use the arrow function syntax to simplify things. Now technically here we need to get access to the movie that is going to be deleted. So this method should have a movie parameter, and that means we need to change this expression here. So in order to pass an argument, we need to change this to an arrow function. So here a function with no parameters, and in the body of this function we're calling this.handle delete with an argument. That argument is this movie object that we are rendering. So here in our map method, this is the movie object that I'm talking about. So we pass that movie object as an argument to handle delete. Now to make sure we have set this up properly, let's go back to our method and do a console.log of this movie object. Save the changes back in the browser. So I'm going to open up the console. Okay, first of all, we have an error here because each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key. This is something we forgot to apply. So back in our render method, this is where we are using the map method of arrays. So as I told you before, every time you use this method, you should set the key attribute or the key property on the element that you're repeating. In this case, we want to set this key to movie.underline_id because that uniquely identifies each movie object. Now, back in the browser, you can see the error is gone. Let's delete this Terminator movie. So delete. On the console, we get the movie object. You can see the title is Terminator. Beautiful. Let's delete Die Hard. Now we get Die Hard on the console. Perfect. Now the last part is to update the state of this component. So back in our movies component, we need to update the state and basically remove that movie from our movies array. As I told you before, we should not directly update the state. Instead, we should call the setState method of our component. So we should create a new movies array that includes all the movies except the movie that we have passed here. This is how we can achieve this. So we define a constant, call it movies. Then we access this.state.movies. We use the filter method to get all the movies except this movie object. So we pass an arrow function here. M goes to m.underline_id does not equal movie.underline_id. So we are getting all the movies except the movie that we have passed here, right? So now we have a new array of movies. We can call this.setState. Here we pass an object. In that object, we should set the movies property to this movies object. So this object, the properties we have defined here, will override the properties of our state object. Now in modern JavaScript, if the key and value are the same, we can simplify this code by removing this repetition. So we only pass this movies. Okay, now let's test this. So back in the browser, I'm going to delete Terminator. It's gone. Now let's delete Trip to Italy. That's gone. Beautiful. So we're done with the deleting of movies. Next, we're going to render a message on top of this table.